I found the phone at 2:13 a.m., the hour when a house stops pretending it's asleep and starts confessing. I hadn't meant to go into the garage. I only followed the sound, metal on concrete, a soft clink that didn't belong to the night. Darnell had come in 20 minutes earlier, moving like a man who believed quiet could erase a timeline. He'd brushed past me in the hallway with the faint smell of hotel soap and winter air, murmured, "Late client dinner," and headed straight to the laundry room. Water ran, a door clicked, then the house settled into that fake calm married people use as wallpaper. I lay in bed listening to pipes cool and the refrigerator hum, counting seconds the way nurses count breaths. After 27 years of marriage, you know your spouse's baseline. You notice deviations. You feel the moment when something in the rhythm turns wrong. That clink pulled me out of the sheets. Barefoot, I went down the stairs. Our two-story colonial sat in a neat Maryland cul-de-sac, the kind where neighbors wave with coffee mugs and argue about lawn service. On paper, we were a stable couple nearing retirement. No drama, no surprises, but the air in the hallway tasted like a question. I eased open the door to the garage. Darkness greeted me like a witness who'd been waiting. Moonlight slid through a small window and laid a pale stripe across the hood of Darnell's sedan. His briefcase sat on the workbench, unlatched, as if he'd emptied it in a hurry. His suit jacket hung over the back of a chair, a clean silhouette that looked like a body without a pulse. And on the concrete, near the driver's side tire, something rectangular caught that faint light. A phone. Not his work phone. Not the scuffed personal one he handled like an extra limb. This one was thinner, newer, the screen black and glossy. I crouched and picked it up. It was warm, as if it had been held recently, as if it had been breathing. My thumb pressed the side button before my brain could talk me out of it. The screen lit up. Missed call. Sierra. Below it, a text preview slid into view with the casual cruelty of technology. Don't forget the transfer before Friday. For a moment, my hearing went strange. The garage widened. My heartbeat sounded loud and slow, like someone knocking from inside my ribs. People think betrayal arrives like a hurricane, loud, dramatic, debris in the air. Sometimes it arrives like a word that doesn't belong, transfer. I'd heard that word before, just not in this house. At work, it meant moving a patient from ICU to the floor, a careful handoff that could save a life or end it. At home, it was the word Darnell used when he talked about rolling funds and optimizing our 401k, like retirement was a machine you could tune. Standing there with Sierra's message glowing, I realized he'd been practicing that language for someone else. Someone younger, someone hungry. Definitely not Trish. A burner phone doesn't just hide love. It hides money. My name is Patrice Coleman, though most people call me Trish. I'm 52, and I've been a nurse long enough to know the first impulse is rarely the smartest one. I've watched people survive because someone stayed calm enough to see the truth. So I didn't scream. I didn't run upstairs and throw the phone at him. I assessed. I looked around the garage. Everything was tidy in that controlled way Darnell loved. On the workbench, beside the open briefcase, sat a ring of keys I didn't recognize. 2 keys were ordinary: house, mailbox. One was small and silver with a stamped number, a storage key, the kind you get when you rent a door to keep secrets behind. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Water dripped. A floorboard creaked once. I slipped the burner phone into the pocket of my robe. I slid the storage key off the ring and closed my fingers around it until the metal bit my skin. Then I walked back into the house like nothing had changed. That's what women do when they've been trained to keep a marriage intact. We become experts at acting normal while the foundation cracks. In the kitchen, I paused at the sink and stared out the window at the streetlights and still cars lined up like sleeping animals. My reflection hovered in the dark glass. Hair twisted up, face bare, eyes too awake. Darnell padded down the stairs in socks a minute later, wearing gray sweatpants and a conference t-shirt. He opened the refrigerator. "You okay?" he asked, not looking at me. His voice had that soft, practiced concern that used to melt me. It sounded like a husband. It sounded like a lie. "I heard something," I said. Thought maybe the garage door didn't close. He shut the fridge. The light went out. In the half-dark, his shoulders tensed and released like he'd rehearsed it. "It's fine," he said. "Probably the wind. You worry too much." There it was. The familiar pivot. Gaslighting in a long marriage doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like a man saying you worry too much while he builds an entire second life behind your back. "I'm going back to bed," I said. He nodded, already moving toward the living room. "Good. We've got that retirement seminar Saturday, remember? Don't stay up. You need rest." Retirement seminar. He said it like the word meant safety. 2 months ago, he'd insisted we meet with a financial planner. "We're going to be retirement ready," he'd said, squeezing my hand across a restaurant table. I believed him because believing is easier than suspecting. Because love is a habit. In bed, I turned away from his side. The burner phone in my robe pocket felt heavy, like a stone. He came in later and slid under the covers, exhaling like he'd earned sleep. His real phone buzzed once on the nightstand. He didn't reach for it. He didn't need to. I lay there thinking about that name, Sierra. Darnell had mentioned her for the last year in passing, the way men do when they're rehearsing a story. Sierra from marketing. Sierra's putting together an event. Always wrapped in professionalism, a tone that dared me to accuse him of anything. My mind moved backward, sifting for symptoms. The new suits that appeared after good quarters. The weekends he called training. The way he'd started working out again, not to be healthy but to be seen. The way he'd corrected me in public like it was a favor. And the money. Numbers tell the truth when people won't. Our joint account had been steady. Mortgage paid off early, no car payments, a quiet kind of security. We weren't flashy. We were the kind of couple who could retire modestly if we were careful. So why had the savings felt lighter lately? Why had Darnell started insisting on paperless billing? Why had he pushed to simplify the investment accounts? "It's complicated," he'd said, leaning over my shoulder at the computer. "Let me handle it. You're busy." Caring disguised as control. I shouldn't have turned the burner phone on again. But I wasn't safe anymore. I was just uninformed. I pressed the button. It opened without a passcode. My stomach dropped. If he wasn't locking it, he didn't think I'd ever touch it. He'd built his secret life on the assumption that I was too trusting, too tired, too decent to dig. A text thread filled the screen. Most messages were from Sierra. Some were from numbers saved as vague names. Travel, Unit B, Unit B. I scrolled slowly, the way you scroll through a chart when you already know the diagnosis, but you need proof. Sierra. "You said you'd move it this week." Darnell. "I will. Stop stressing." Sierra. "The retirement account. Our future. Transfer before Friday." Another message held an address and a gate code. Another showed a hotel confirmation. Dates that overlapped with my 12-hour shifts, nights I'd eaten dinner alone with the television talking for company. This wasn't just a husband who cheated and had an affair. This was financial infidelity. This was a retirement savings betrayal measured in deadlines. And it wasn't new. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Tears would have made this grief. This was something else. This was strategy. Beside me, Darnell breathed with the calm confidence of a man who thought he'd won. I stared at his back and thought about the years I'd worked weekends and holidays, the times I'd said no to vacations because we were being responsible. I thought about the hidden credit card statements I'd stopped seeing once everything went paperless. I thought about how many decisions I'd made based on trust. I turned the burner phone off and tucked it away, the way you set a scalpel down after realizing you're the one on the table. At 6 a.m., my alarm went off, bright and cheerful, like it hadn't been listening. Darnell groaned and slapped it silent. He kissed my shoulder. "Dee." A lazy press of lips that might have meant love once. "Morning, babe," he murmured. I kept my voice steady. "Morning." He yawned. "Big day. Meeting with the regional director. Might run late. Don't wait up." "Okay," I said. He stood in the doorway, stretching, smiling like a man who owned the air. Then he glanced back at me, expression careful. "You good?" he asked again. I looked at him and held his gaze. "I'm fine," I said, and the words tasted like metal. He nodded, satisfied, and left for the shower. I sat up slowly. My hands didn't shake. Maybe this is what happens when fear finally has a shape. It stops being fog and becomes a target. I opened my fist and looked at the storage key. The number stamped on it was 417. I didn't know where Unit B was yet, but I knew one thing. Darnell had a door somewhere with my future behind it, and I was done asking permission to open it. Before I tell you what I found when I followed that key, and why it turned our quiet retirement plan into a silver divorce, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I read them, and it reminds me we're not alone in the dark. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because the next part isn't just about a midlife crisis affair. It's about the cold moment a woman realizes she's been funding her own replacement, and the steady way she takes her life back, even if it means starting over at 55. By the time Darnell left for work that morning, the house looked the same as it always had. The coffee maker hissed, the dishwasher hummed. From the outside, we were still the couple on Maple Ridge Court, who waved at the mailman and talked about retirement plans like they were weather. Inside me, something had shifted into a quieter gear. Not panic, not grief. The clinical focus I used when a monitor started screaming and everybody else froze. I drove to the hospital with the burner phone heavy in my bag. The sky was low and gray, the color of wet cement. Traffic moved in slow, obedient lines. I kept both hands on the wheel because if I loosened my grip, I might start shaking. At work, I became Nurse Coleman, charge nurse, coordinator, the woman who could handle a code blue without raising her voice. I moved through vitals and meds and family questions, smiling at the right places, keeping my voice calm. But every time my own phone buzzed in my pocket, my stomach tightened, expecting Sierra's name to float across my screen, like a ghost refusing to stay contained. During lunch, I slipped into an empty conference room and powered on the burner phone. No new messages. Still, I scrolled again, forcing myself to read like I was reading lab results, dates, fragments. Unit B. Gate code. Friday. Wire. I took photos of the screen with my phone, proof in case the device vanished, then shut it off and tucked it away. It felt like putting a contaminated instrument back into a tray. If you want to understand why I didn't confront him that night, you have to understand the kind of marriage we had built. Not the romantic version people imagine when they hear 27 years. Ours was stitched together by routine and sacrifice, and the belief that effort would eventually be rewarded. We met when I was 25 and he was 27. I was working nights and finishing my degree. Darnell was new to sales, still wearing cheap cologne with expensive confidence. He walked into the clinic with a sample bag and that careful charm some men use when they're still auditioning for the person they plan to become. He listened when I talked. He remembered details. After a long stretch of being tired and responsible, his attention felt like warmth. He proposed fast. I said yes fast. My mother warned me about speed, but Darnell looked decent on paper. Steady job, ambition, the right kind of manners. We married in a small church ceremony, and for a while we did what couples do in the beginning. Built a life out of hope and hand-me-down furniture. The first years were tight, but we had plans. Darnell talked constantly about the future, about being the kind of man who could provide. When he got promoted to regional sales rep, the title sounded bigger than the paycheck, but he celebrated like it was a coronation. He started buying suits on credit, telling me image matters in this industry. He learned to talk about branding and networking. He practiced his handshake in the mirror before conferences like he was putting on armor. I didn't mind the ambition. I minded the way it changed the temperature of our house. The first time he made me feel small, it wasn't a fight. It was a joke at a family cookout. My cousin praised my food, and Darnell laughed and said, "Trish cooks like she's feeding an army. Must be that hospital training." Everybody chuckled politely. I chuckled too. Later, when I told him it hurt, he blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. I was kidding, he said. You always take things the wrong way. That was the first time he suggested the problem was my perception, not his behavior. Over the years, those moments multiplied. Paper cuts. He critiqued my clothes before company events, said I looked comfortable in a tone that meant plain. He told me my laugh was loud. He started introducing me as my wife Trish, she's a nurse, with a pause before nurse, like he needed to manage expectations. Then the retirement talk began in earnest. One night in our 40s, he sat at the kitchen table and said, "We need to be smarter. We're not young anymore." He opened spreadsheets and showed me projections, neat lines and future years. He talked about retiring early, traveling, buying something near the water. He said he wanted to leave a legacy. I liked the idea, so I agreed to cut expenses, to pay extra on the mortgage, to skip vacations. I picked up overtime. I worked holidays for time and a half. I carried the weight because I believed we were carrying it together. Meanwhile, Darnell got smoother. Better suits, better watches, better stories about client dinners. He started traveling more, always when my schedule was packed. He started keeping his phone face down. He started taking calls outside. And then, about a year ago, Sierra became a name that lived in our living room. "She's sharp," he'd say, loosening his tie. "Marketing. Knows how to package things. She's helping me with the pitch deck. She's got connections." The way he said her name was too casual, too practiced, like he was sprinkling it into conversation so it would feel normal, like acclimating a room to a smell. The first time I saw her was at a corporate charity gala. Darnell insisted we go. "It's important," he said. "The company wants visibility." The ballroom glittered with white tablecloths and silent money. People laughed with their teeth. Darnell smiled with the bright, fixed smile he reserved for work. Sierra approached him with familiarity, touched his arm lightly, and then turned to me. "Patrice, right?" she said. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were cool. "Darnell talks about you." I waited for him to add something that proved I existed in his mind outside of my usefulness. He didn't. He just said, "This is Sierra. She's a rock star." At 54, my husband called another woman a rock star. Sierra's smile widened. "I'm just trying to keep him organized." All night I watched them talk. Nothing overt, nothing you could point to. Just ease. Just closeness. Their bodies angled toward each other like magnets. When we got home, I asked, "Do you like her?" He took off his shoes and said, "She's good at her job. Don't start." After that, he stopped asking me to come to events. "You'd be bored," he said. What he meant was, "You don't fit the picture." I didn't have proof then, just the sensation of being edged out, like a chair being pulled back from the table a fraction every day, until one day you realize you're not seated anymore. The month we went to a retirement-ready seminar at the community college, Darnell played the part of devoted husband. He held my hand. He joked with other couples. He told the presenter we were disciplined. On the ride home, he talked about a fresh start. That night, I checked our account and noticed a withdrawal I didn't recognize. Not huge, just enough to slip past casual notice. When I asked him, he said, "Fees, moving money around. Don't worry." Don't worry, the anthem of women being robbed politely. I let it go because I didn't want to be the suspicious wife, because I'd been trained to believe trust was the highest form of love, because deep down, I feared what I'd find if I tugged the thread. Now the thread was already in my hand. Before I went to the bank, I tried the polite way. I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and logged into the accounts I'd always managed. I'm the one who remembers birthdays, refills prescriptions, schedules dentist appointments, tracks the fridge filter. For most of our marriage, I also tracked the bills, because Darnell hated details unless they made him look competent. The login screen blinked at me like a blank face. Password incorrect. I tried again. Incorrect. My hands went still. In the next room, the house ticked and settled, the sound of wood shrinking in the cold. I could hear Darnell upstairs on a call, laughing softly, using that lighter voice he never used with me anymore. I clicked Forgot Password. A security prompt appeared with questions I didn't recognize. First car model? Favorite vacation city? Those weren't my answers. Those weren't even our memories. They were his rewritten version of us, scrubbed clean of the messy years when we drove used cars and took day trips because we couldn't afford hotels. A reset code was sent to Darnell's email. Of course it was. I sat there staring at that screen, feeling the smallest, strangest grief. Not the betrayal itself, but the thoroughness. He wasn't just hiding an affair. He was relocating the control center of our life into his hands and locking the door behind him. Paperless billing had been his idea. Less clutter, he'd said, tossing envelopes into the recycling without opening them. We're modern. We're streamlined. When I asked for statements, he'd sighed like I was dragging us backward. Trish, you don't need to worry about that. Trust me. Trust me. Another anthem. I stood up and walked into the living room where our old file cabinet sat against the wall. It used to hold mortgage papers, insurance cards, the kind of documents that prove your life is real. Now the drawers were half empty. I pulled one open and found only a thin folder labeled House and a second labeled Taxes. The rest, bank, retirement, credit, had vanished like they'd never existed. On top of the cabinet was Darnell's planner, leather-bound, expensive. He guarded it the way he guarded his phone. I opened it, anyway. A list of dates ran down one page in his neat block handwriting. Beside each date, hotel, dinner, SB, and twice, the same phrase, transfer. My throat tightened. The cold in me deepened, hardening into something usable. When I closed the planner, the leather made a soft sound, like a mouth shutting. Outside, a car passed slow, headlights sliding across the ceiling like a searchlight. I thought of all the nights I'd waited up, believing late meetings. The house felt suddenly staged, like a set after actors leave. Even the silence sounded rehearsed, waiting for the next scene to swallow me. After my shift, I went to the bank in person. The branch was quiet, all soft carpet and polite voices. I asked to speak to someone about our accounts, and a banker pulled up our profile and listed everything that was supposed to represent us. Then he paused. There's also an external transfer authorization on file, he said. Set up last year. My pulse ticked once. External transfer to where? He hesitated, eyes on the screen. It's linked to another institution. The primary contact for that authorization is Mr. Coleman. Of course. Darnell had made himself the gatekeeper. Can you tell me how much has been transferred out in the last 6 months? I asked. He clicked, then read the totals in a neutral voice. The number was not neutral. It was deliberate and measured, thousands. Not enough to trigger an alert, enough to build something on the side. Print the transactions leaving this account, I said. He did. Each page slid out like a confession. In my car, the papers trembled in my hands. Not from fear, but from rage so cold it felt like ice water under the skin. Cheating was one thing. Betrayal of the body. This was betrayal of time. Of years I'd worked and sacrificed. A retirement savings betrayal, itemized. I drove home in the early dark. When I pulled into the driveway, Darnell's car was already there. Lights on. Domestic normalcy laid over something rotten. Inside, I heard his voice in the living room, low and pleased on a call. Not with me, with whoever made him feel important. I didn't announce myself. I stood in the hallway and let the sound wash over me, the way you stand outside an operating room and listen to the quiet before a major procedure. He ended the call and turned, smile ready. Hey babe, long day? Yeah, I said. You? Same. But we're getting there. He kissed my cheek, warm mouth, empty eyes. I thought about the burner phone hidden in my bag. I thought about the storage key stamped 417. I thought about Friday. And I realized something that made the room feel colder. This wasn't a mistake he'd stumbled into. This was a plan. So I smiled back, just enough to look believable. Good, I said. I'm glad we're getting there. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his laptop, already disappearing into the life he thought I'd never see. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to collect them. Friday sits in the human mind like a deadline and a threat. All week it stared at me from Sierra's message. Transfer before Friday. As if a calendar square could tighten a noose. I spent the next 2 days performing normal. I cooked dinner. I asked Darnell about his meetings. I watched him talk with his hands the way salesmen do, shaping air into promises. I nodded at the right times and let him believe the mask still worked. At work, I charted and rounded and caught an intern from making a medication error. My hands stayed steady. My voice stayed calm. But under that calm, my brain was building a map. That's what nurses do. We track patterns. We notice what other people dismiss. We know that small numbers tell the story before the big ones arrive. On Wednesday night, while Darnell showered, I took his laptop off the charging station and set it on the kitchen table. He never left it unattended before. Now he did, because comfort makes men careless, or because he'd decided I was harmless. The screen woke up with his face, an old photo from 10 years ago, when his cheeks were fuller and his smile looked less practiced. A password prompt hovered in the center. I didn't try to guess. Guessing is emotional. I was done with emotion. I opened the drawer where we kept the instruction manuals and batteries and random keys. Underneath a stack of dead AAs, I found a small notebook Darnell had used when he first started tracking his workouts. Pages of numbers, reps, weights, dates. On the last page, in a different ink, he'd written a sequence like it mattered. 0417. My stomach did a slow roll. Storage key, unit number, a code that belonged to a door. I typed it into the laptop. It unlocked. For a second, I felt nothing. Not triumph, not fear. Just the flat certainty of a diagnosis confirmed. His email was already open. He'd left it that way. The inbox filled with subject lines that looked normal. Q4 pipeline, client recap, travel receipt. And then, like a bruise under thin skin, a thread with no subject at all. I clicked. The message was from a generic account with numbers in the address. The body was short. Payment received. Thank you for your business. Attached was a PDF. I didn't open it. Attachments are where viruses live, and Darnell had been careless enough already. Instead, I hovered and read the file name, Storage Unit Lease 417.op PDF. My fingers went cold. I forwarded the email to myself. Then I searched for transfer. Dozens of hits appeared. Some were work-related, but several were bank notifications routed through his inbox, filtered into a folder labeled Archive. Archive, like my life was already dead and stored away. Inside were confirmation emails from our retirement account. External transfer requested. External transfer completed. Each one had a timestamp. Each one matched the withdrawals the banker had printed for me. I clicked the earliest. It was from 14 months ago. The amount was small. 2,000. A test, a leak, a probe, then 4,000, then 5, then 7. Always on a Thursday, always at night. Always after I'd worked a double shift. He had been siphoning our future while I was taking care of strangers' hearts. I shut the laptop and put it back exactly where I'd found it. I erased my fingerprints with the edge of my sleeve. I washed my hands for a full 20 seconds, the way we do after touching something contaminated. And then I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain, listening to the shower run upstairs like a waterfall that couldn't wash anything clean. The next morning, I called Yvette. Yvette Grant is one of those women who can read silence like scripture. She's 53, a mother of 3 grown kids, and she's been a nurse as long as I have. The hospital tried to make her charge once, and she said no because she didn't want to be responsible for anybody's lies. She tells the truth with a laugh in her voice, like she's doing you a favor by not pretending. When she answered, I could hear a TV in the background and the clink of a spoon on a mug. "Trish," she said, "you off today? Why you calling me before noon?" "I need you to listen," I said. The line went quiet. The spoon stopped. "Talk." I told her about the burner phone. I told her about Sierra's message. I told her about the transfers, the paperless billing, the archived emails, the storage unit lease. I didn't tell it like a dramatic story. I told it like a chart review. Facts, dates, numbers. When I finished, there was a pause that lasted long enough for me to hear my own breathing. Then Yvette said, low and steady, "Baby, that ain't just cheating. That's theft." I swallowed. "I know. You got copies?" "I'm working on it." "Good. Because men like that will look you dead in the face and say you imagining things." Her voice sharpened. "Don't you let him make you feel crazy. He's the one living a double life." Double life. The phrase landed like a heavy book. "I need to know what's in that unit," I said. "You ain't going alone," Yvette said immediately. I almost protested. Pride started to rise. Then I remembered my mother's voice from years ago. Being tough isn't pretending it doesn't hurt. It's admitting it hurts and dealing with it anyway. "Okay," I said. "Meet me Saturday morning." "Where?" Yvette asked. I looked at the storage key in my palm. 417. "I'll text you the address when I find it," I said. After the call, I powered on the burner phone again. My thumb hovered over the messages like I was about to touch a bruise. I searched the conversation for anything that looked like a location. A few lines down, Sierra had typed, "Gate code still Coleman 98. Don't forget, Unit B, top row, gate code, Unit B." That was enough to start. I took the phone to my car and sat in the driveway with the engine off, scrolling through threads the way you scroll through a patient's history when their symptoms don't match their story. Sierra wasn't the only contact. One thread was labeled travel. It was a series of hotel confirmations forwarded as screenshots. Another was labeled new place, and the messages in it made my skin prickle. "It's perfect. 2 bedrooms. Quiet. You said you wanted peace. We'll be there soon. I just have to finish this the right way. Your wife suspects? She's too busy saving everybody else. She won't notice." I stared at that last line until the letters blurred. He knew my exhaustion. He used it like cover. I took more photos. I recorded the voicemail Sierra had left, her voice syrupy and impatient. "Darnell, call me back. You promised me the retirement account would be ours before Friday, okay? I'm not playing." Not playing. Like my life was a game and I was the piece they planned to remove. I shut the phone off, put it in a padded envelope, and taped the flap. Evidence. Chain of custody. The language of courtrooms and hospitals started blending in my head. Both worlds ruled by documentation and consequences. On Friday, Darnell came home late with takeout and false cheer. "Look what I got," he said, holding up a plastic bag. "Your favorite." It was my favorite from 10 years ago, before my stomach started rejecting fried food. He didn't know that. Or he didn't care. We ate at the kitchen island. He talked about a big opportunity, about moving some things around. He watched my face the way people watch a poker table, trying to see if you know. I kept my expression neutral. "Sounds good," I said. He smiled, relieved, and went upstairs to shower. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed on the counter. His real phone. The screen lit up with a bank notification. External transfer completed. My breath caught, sharp and involuntary. He'd done it. Before Friday ended, he'd moved more money. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. The proof was already printing itself in his inbox, in the bank's system. In the paper trail he thought I'd never follow. I waited until he fell asleep that night. Then I opened my laptop and created a folder called Work. Inside it, I built a subfolder called 2026 Budget. Inside that, I saved screenshots, PDFs, transaction lists, the forwarded storage lease, the bank printouts, the photos of the burner phone screen. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud drive with a password Darnell would never guess. Because it wasn't about him, my father's middle name, and the street my mother grew up on. If Darnell was rewriting our marriage, I was rewriting my access to reality. Saturday morning came gray and cold. Yvette pulled into my driveway at 7:10 a.m. in her dented SUV with a thermos in the cup holder and determination in her eyes. She looked me up and down. "You sleep?" "A little," I lied. She snorted. Girl, I can smell adrenaline. I locked the house and got into her passenger seat. The burner phone envelope sat in my tote bag like a beating heart. The storage key was in my coat pocket. You sure you want to do this? Yvette asked. I watched the neighborhood wake up. Dog walkers, joggers, a man pulling trash bins to the curb. Normal lives in motion. I already did it, I said. I just haven't opened the door yet. We drove to an industrial strip outside town where warehouses sat like blank faces. I'd found the address on the lease PDF. The place was called Ridgeway Storage. The sign out front was sun-faded, the letters chipped. A chain-link fence wrapped the property like a warning. Yvette slowed at the gate. Code? She asked. I typed 198 into the keypad. The gate buzzed and slid open with a metallic groan that sounded like something being dragged out of hiding. Inside, rows of storage units stretched like narrow hallways, each door a ribbed slab of metal. It smelled like dust and old cardboard and engine oil. A security camera perched on a pole, its black eye angled toward us. Yvette parked near the top row. Unit B, she said, scanning the letters painted on posts. We found it halfway down. B417. My mouth went dry. The padlock on the unit was new, shiny, too clean for the rest of the place. Darnell had upgraded his secrets. I pulled the small silver key from my pocket. My fingers were steady, but my chest felt tight, as if my body knew we were about to breathe something toxic. The key slid into the lock easily. It turned with a soft click. The door rolled up with a rattle that echoed down the row like a warning bell. At first, all I saw was darkness and the outline of stacked boxes. Then Yvette flicked on her phone flashlight, and the beam cut into the space, revealing the contents like a spotlight on a stage. Cardboard boxes labeled in Darnell's handwriting. Tax, invest, new place, a folded moving blanket, a small suitcase, and, against the back wall, a plastic bin with a bright orange lid, the kind people use for holiday decorations. My knees went weak, not from fear, but from the absurdity. My life had been reduced to bins and labels. Yvette stepped inside first, slow and careful. Lord, she whispered. I followed, the concrete floor cold through my shoes. The air inside the unit was stale, like it hadn't been breathed in months. I reached for the nearest box labeled Invest and opened it. Inside were manila envelopes stuffed with statements, retirement account statements, brokerage confirmations, wire transfer receipts, neat stacks, all printed, all real, all physical, like Darnell trusted paper when it served him. My throat tightened. He kept them here, I said. Because he knew you'd never come looking, Yvette replied. We opened another box. Inside were brochures for condos near the water, glossy photos of balconies and sunlight, a folder labeled Sierra plus D, another folder labeled Separation Plan. I stared at that last one. Separation Plan. He wasn't cheating and hoping to get away with it. He was engineering my removal. My hands moved on their own, flipping through pages like I was triaging. Lists of assets, notes about what to tell me, a timeline with bullet points. Secure external transfers, ongoing. Maintain calm at home. Establish new residence, lease signed. Consult attorney, M. Klein. File after Q2 bonus, after Q2 bonus. He planned to wait until he'd drained what he wanted, then leave me with the shell. Yvette made a sound behind me, a low growl that didn't belong to a human throat. This man is sick. I set the folder down carefully, as if it might bite. Then I noticed the orange-lidded bin. It was labeled in thick marker, Christmas. I opened it with numb fingers. Inside were ornaments. Not ours, not the ones from our tree, the ones my daughter Nia made in elementary school. The ones shaped like tiny mittens and snowflakes. These were new, still wrapped in tissue paper, all in a coordinated color scheme of silver and white. Beneath them, a velvet jewelry box. My breath stopped. I opened the box. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring, a band, wide and gleaming, the the kind a man buys when he wants to perform seriousness. Under it was a receipt with Sierra Bank's name and a date from 3 months ago. Yvette leaned over my shoulder. "Oh, hell no," she breathed. My vision tunneled. The storage unit felt smaller, the walls closing in. I heard the distant hum of the highway like ocean noise. I set the ring down and forced myself to keep looking, because stopping would mean feeling. In another bin, I found a stack of printed photos. Darnell and Sierra on a beach. Darnell and Sierra at a rooftop bar. Darnell's arm around her waist in a way he hadn't held me in years. There was a photo of them standing in front of a "for lease" sign. The sign had a number. And behind them, in the reflection of the glass door, I could see a unit number plaque. B4 scene. They'd taken a picture here. In this place. Like it was romantic. My stomach turned hard. Yvette touched my elbow. "Trish," she said softly. "Breathe." I sucked in air. It tasted like dust and metal. We spent the next hour photographing everything. Every statement, every timeline page, every receipt. Yvette held the flashlight and called out dates. I recorded them in my notes app, building a timeline so tight it could strangle denial. Financial infidelity has a rhythm. So does a double life. Once you see the beat, you can't unhear it. When we were done, I closed the boxes and rolled the door down. The metal rattled and clanged, sealing the darkness again. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a slap. I stood there with the key in my hand and realized something strange. I wasn't shattered. I was clear. Yvette exhaled hard. "What you gonna do?" "I'm going to talk to a lawyer," I said. "A shark lawyer," she corrected. "Yes," I agreed. "A shark." Back in the car, she handed me her thermos. Coffee, strong and bitter. I drank it like medicine. On Monday, I met Marlon Reed. He wasn't in a downtown glass tower like TV lawyers. His office sat above a barber shop in a brick building that smelled faintly of aftershave and old paper. The waiting room had a worn leather couch and a bowl of peppermints that looked like they'd been there since the 90s. Marlon Reed came out and called my name like it mattered. He was 49, tall, with graying hair at his temples and eyes that missed nothing. He shook my hand once and led me into his office. The walls were lined with binders. A framed photo of a woman and 2 kids sat on his desk, the only softness in the room. "What brings you here, Ms. Coleman?" he asked, voice even. I set my folder on his desk. Inside were copies, bank printouts, screenshots, the lease, the timeline, photos of the ring and receipts. "I think my husband is stealing our retirement," I said. Marlon didn't flinch. He opened the folder and began reading. His face stayed neutral, but his eyes sharpened as he scanned. After a few minutes, he looked up. "You have evidence of an affair," he said. "But more importantly, you have evidence of dissipation of marital assets." I nodded. "He's been transferring money out." Marlon tapped the page. "And you have proof of where it went?" "Not the final destination yet," I admitted. "But I have the external transfer confirmations and the storage unit documents." Marlon leaned back. "Good. We don't argue feelings," he said. "We document facts." The words hit me like a handrail, something solid to hold. He slid a legal pad toward himself and began writing. "First thing," he said, "do not confront him until we're ready. Second, secure your own funds. Third, we need to trace the transfers. We can subpoena records once we file. Fourth, we prepare for the possibility that he will try to paint you as unstable." I thought of Darnell's favorite phrase, "You worry too much." My jaw tightened. "I'm not unstable." "I know," Marlon said, "but court isn't about what's true in your heart. It's about what we can prove on paper." He looked at me for a long moment. "Are you safe at home?" The question surprised me, not because Darnell had ever hit me. He hadn't. But safety isn't only bruises. "I don't think he would hurt me physically," I said. Marlon nodded once. "Still, when a person's control is threatened, they can become unpredictable. I want you to have a plan, a place to go, someone who knows. My friend Yvette, I said. Good, he replied. Now about this burner phone. I pulled the padded envelope from my bag and placed it on his desk. Marlon didn't open it yet. He looked at it the way a surgeon looks at a tumor on an MRI, with respect for what it could do. That device, he said quietly, is a gift, and also a hazard. If he realizes it's missing, he'll panic. He'll delete things. He'll move money. We need to be ahead of him. So what do we do? I asked. Marlon's mouth tightened into something that was almost a smile. We let him think he's still in control, he said. We give him space to make one more mistake. A chill slid down my spine. The podcast part of my brain, the part that likes true crime and courtroom recordings, recognized the tone. This wasn't revenge. This was containment. How? I asked. Marlon turned his legal pad so I could see the outline he'd written. Open separate account in your name only. Redirect paycheck. Freeze joint credit if possible. Document all communication. Do not tip your hand. Set a trigger. If he initiates another transfer, we file immediately. He tapped the last line. You said Friday was his deadline, he said. That means there's pressure. Somebody is pushing him. Sierra, I said. Or her family, Marlon said. Or his. He paused. Either way, pressure makes people sloppy. We use that. When I left Marlon's office, the air outside felt sharper. The city sounded louder. But inside me, a plan was forming like bone knitting after a fracture. At home that night, Darnell kissed me on the forehead and asked if I wanted to watch a show. His hands were warm. His smile was easy. I watched him with a new kind of sight, the way you watch a patient who looks fine until you check the labs. I'm tired, I said. Maybe another night. He nodded, not offended, already turning to his phone. While he scrolled, I walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked the same as she had last week. Same brown skin, same tired eyes, same soft lines at the corners of her mouth. But something behind those eyes had changed. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was gathering. And somewhere in an industrial storage lot, behind a metal door stamped B417, my husband had stored the proof of his double life like trophies. He didn't understand what I understood now. Evidence doesn't stay quiet. It speaks. And I was finally listening. The week after my first meeting with Marlon, I lived in two realities. In one, I was still a wife. I made dinner. I asked about his day. I let Darnell talk in circles about opportunities and timelines, while I nodded like the words meant anything. I kept my face soft and my voice even, because masks only work when you wear them faithfully. In the other reality, I was quietly separating my life from his. On Tuesday, I opened a new bank account in my name only and redirected my paycheck. The banker didn't ask questions. She slid the forms across the desk like she'd seen this before. When the direct deposit change confirmed on my payroll screen, it felt like air returning to a room that had been sealed. That night, I pulled my credit report and found a card I didn't recognize. Opened 8 months earlier, bills sent to a P.O. box. I printed the page and added it to my folder. Hidden credit card statements don't vanish. They relocate. Thursday brought the first jolt of movement. The burner phone, sealed in its padded envelope, vibrated inside my tote bag while I was charting at the nurse's station. I carried it into a supply closet and opened it with hands that stayed steady out of stubborn pride. Sierra calling. I let it ring out. Then I played the voicemail. Her voice was sweet, impatient, and edged with threat. Darnell, where are you? You said you were handling it. Don't embarrass me. I told my mom we'd have the money moved before the weekend. Call me back. Her mom. The word chilled me more than the affair. This wasn't just cheating. It was planning. It was a future being announced at somebody else's table. That evening, Darnell came home and asked, too casually, You seen my other phone? I kept my eyes on the sink. Other phone? Work gave me a spare for travel. he said, shrugging like it didn't matter. His smile was thin. Must have left it in the car. I hummed like I believed him. He went to the garage and searched long enough for me to hear the edge in his breathing. When he came back empty-handed, his eyes lingered on me like he was trying to measure my ignorance. Probably at the office, he said. Yeah, I replied. Probably. Pressure makes people sloppy. Marlon had said that. I started to see it in the way Darnell checked his real phone every 5 minutes, in the way he closed his office door for work calls he used to take in the living room. Friday night, he came home early, bright-eyed, holding a folder like a prop. Good news, he said. We're close to something big. Might change our whole retirement timeline. Our retirement, he repeated, smiling. And I watched his mouth form the word ours, like it still belonged to us. After dinner, I passed his office and heard his voice through the door, low and urgent. Stop calling this phone. Use the other one, he snapped, and my blood cooled because he was talking to Sierra and he was panicking. I texted Marlon that night. Burner phone missing, he's nervous. Voicemail mentioned her mom. Marlon replied, Good. Do not confront. Keep documenting. The next morning, I went back to Ridgeway Storage alone. The gate groaned open. The rows of metal doors sat under a pale sky like shut mouths. I unlocked B417 and rolled it up, the sound echoing down the lane like a warning bell. I found the separation plan folder again, and tucked beneath it, an unmarked envelope I hadn't opened before. Inside was a lease agreement for an apartment in Arlington, Virginia. Tenant names, Darnell Coleman and Sierra Banks. Move-in date, next month. My chest tightened, not from shock, but from the clean finality of it. He had scheduled my erasure. I rolled the unit door down and locked it with a click that sounded like a decision. Back home, Darnell was in the kitchen making coffee, humming like a man with nothing to fear. He looked up and smiled. Morning, he said. You sleep okay? Yes, I answered, and it was the truth. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for his moods. I was bracing for my own plan. I would let him keep talking until he talked himself into the evidence we needed. I would let him keep moving money until the pattern was undeniable. Tactical waiting isn't weakness, it's procedure. And in the quiet of that morning, while Darnell stirred sugar into his cup and smiled at a future he thought he'd stolen, I felt something steady settle under my ribs. A plan doesn't stay quiet forever. It moves. Midweek, I also went back to the branch where the banker had printed the withdrawals. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I simply asked for a transaction history covering the last 18 months and a note in the file that I disputed any transfers not authorized by me. The banker's eyes flicked toward the glass wall as if he expected Darnell to appear and charm his way out of consequences. Is everything okay at home? He asked carefully. I'm making it okay, I replied. He printed the pages. The stack was thick enough to feel like weight in my hands. Each transfer was a drip, and together they made a flood. Thursday nights, late, after my overtime shifts, the pattern wasn't just financial, it was personal. He moved money when he knew I'd be too tired to notice. At the hospital, Yvette kept an eye on me without hovering. In the break room, she slid a granola bar across the table like it was a peace offering. You eating? She asked. I'm functioning, I said. That ain't an answer, she replied, then softened. Listen, Trish, men like Darnell don't just cheat, they rehearse. They practice lies until the lies sound like truth. Don't let his rehearsal overwrite your memory. Her words stayed with me. That night I replayed the voicemail again, not because I needed the pain, but because I needed the cadence. Sierra's impatience, the way she said money like it was intimacy, the way she said mom like the affair had witnesses. If I'd still been the woman Darnell married, I would have prayed for him to come home to himself. I would have begged for counseling. I would have tried to outlove his emptiness. But the woman I was becoming understood something colder. You can't compete with a fantasy. You can only expose it. And fantasies hate paperwork. On Friday afternoon, while I was still on the unit, my bank app flashed, external transfer completed. I stared until the letter steadied, then screenshot it and emailed it to myself with the subject line, budget. It was almost funny how a marriage could die inside a spreadsheet. Burner phone evidence and bank alerts, love turned into documents, and cold, undeniable math. The night I put the evidence on the table, the kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and restraint. Darnell came in at 8:47 p.m. with a thin smile and that polished, long-day voice he used when he wanted the house to stay quiet. He set his briefcase on the island, kissed my cheek like a stamped approval, and went straight to the fridge. "You cook?" he asked, already moving things around like noise could rearrange reality. "I ate at work." He grunted, poured water, and checked his phone. He looked comfortable inside the lie. I waited until his shoulders dropped. Then I said, "We need to talk." The glass paused midway to his mouth. Annoyance flickered first, then caution. He set it down carefully, like he was handling something fragile. "About what?" he asked, voice light. "I went to the bank." His eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because money's been leaving our accounts." He exhaled through his nose, the beginning of a lecture. "Trish, I told you I've been moving things around. Consolidation, fees, retirement planning." I nodded once. "I asked them to print the transactions." That did it. Control threatened. The temperature in the room shifted. "You didn't need to do that," he said. "You know I handle the finances." "You handle them," I repeated. "That's the problem." He leaned back against the counter, arms crossing. "So what is this? An interrogation?" "I'm not interrogating," I said. "I'm documenting." The word hit him like a slap. He tried to laugh it off. "Okay, documenting. Great. So you found a transfer. It's for us." "For us?" I echoed, tasting how easy he made it sound. I pulled a thick manila folder from my tote and set it on the table between us. Bank printouts, external transfer confirmations, dates and amounts, stacked like bricks. His smile faltered. "What's that?" 18 months, I said. "External authorizations in your name only." He didn't open it. He stared at it like it could bite. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being precise." He pushed off the counter and came closer, palms flat on the table. "You don't understand how my compensation works. Sometimes money moves. You're making a big deal out of nothing." He was trying to wear me down the way he always had. Talk fast, sound certain, make my questions feel childish. It used to work. I kept my voice low. "Do you have a second phone?" He froze. Just for a breath, his face went blank. Then he rebuilt it into irritation. "A second phone? What are you talking about?" I placed a padded envelope on the table beside the folder. I didn't open it. I just let it exist. His eyes locked on it. His throat moved. "That's mine." "You told me it was Works," I said. "It is," he snapped, too quick. "Then why is the lock screen showing a missed call from Sierra?" I asked. His mouth opened, then closed. He reached for offense. "You went through my things?" "I found it in the garage," I said. "Warm, like you'd just held it." His eyes flicked toward the stairs, toward escape, then back to me. "You're paranoid. You work too much. You come home and—" "Play it," I said. He blinked. "What?" "The voicemail," I said. "Play it." "There's nothing—" I cut him off by opening my phone and pressing play on the audio file I'd saved. Sierra's voice spilled into the clean kitchen, sweet, impatient, possessive. "You promised me the retirement account would be ours. Before Friday, okay? I'm not playing." The refrigerator hummed. Everything else went still. Darnell's face changed in slow layers. Shock, then anger, then calculation. He tried. "That's— You don't have to explain who she is," I said. "I know." He stared at me, breathing shallow. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I said. "An affair. And theft." His eyes flashed. "Stealing? You always do that. You keep score like you're the only one who sacrifices." Old script. the one designed to make me ashamed of being careful. I slid a page from the folder. External transfer completed. Timestamp. Then another. Then another. You made transfers on Thursdays, I said, after my overtime, when you knew I'd be too tired to check. He scoffed, but his voice was thinner. Coincidence! I turned to the storage lease, Ridgeway Storage, Unit B417, with his signature at the bottom. Then I set a small silver key beside it, stamped 417. His pupils tightened. What is that? You tell me, I said. Because I went there. Silence pressed in like cold air under a door. You had no right, he whispered. I let the audacity sit in the center of the table. You weren't just leaving me, I said. You were erasing me. He shook his head quickly. I've been under pressure. Work is complicated. Sierra is. She's a mistake. A mistake with a deadline, I said. He flinched. I placed the Arlington lease on top of everything. 2 names. Move-in date. His pen strokes sharp as knives. His shoulders sagged. And there it was. Fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. You were moving next month, I said. And you were taking our retirement with you. He rubbed his forehead, a gesture meant to look human. I wasn't taking everything, he said. I was going to leave you. Enough. Enough. Like he was a judge handing down survival. Something in me went cold and quiet. Enough isn't your decision. He reached for the folder, fingers trembling. We can fix this. I'll stop the transfers. Stop, I said. Don't touch anything. He froze with his hands hovering. That's evidence, I added. His gaze lifted to mine. In it, I saw the moment he understood I wasn't begging to be chosen. I was choosing myself. He tried to find anger again. You're going to divorce me over this? After all these years? I watched the kitchen clock tick, each second sealing something shut. I'm going to divorce you, I said, because you already divorced me in your head. You just forgot to tell me. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen and flinched. Sierra Darnell reached for it. Put it on speaker, I said. He hesitated, then tapped. The call filled the room. Finally, Sierra said. Did you do it? Did you move it? Darnell's eyes begged without words. What are you talking about? He asked, voice strained. Don't play with me, she snapped. I told my mom we'd have the transfer by the weekend. I'm not standing there looking stupid. You said she wouldn't notice. You said you had it under control. She. Not my name. Just an obstacle. The lemon clean air felt sharp enough to cut. I have to go, Darnell said. If you mess this up, Sierra started. He ended the call. For a second, neither of us moved. The call log sat on his phone like a fresh footprint in wet cement. I noticed the vein in his temple pulsing, the way his fingers worried the edge of his glass. This is the part people imagine is loud, screaming, throwing, the dramatic collapse. But Darnell didn't collapse. He recalculated. He took a sip, set the glass down, and said slowly, Okay, you got me, but it's not as bad as it sounds. He tried to smile. It didn't land. I lifted my phone and, without asking, took a photo of his screen, time, name, missed calls, then emailed it to my secure folder with one word in the subject line. Friday. Darnell watched me do it, and his expression tightened. Are you recording me now? I'm protecting myself, I said. You don't have to do all this, he insisted. We can keep this private. Handle it like adults. Private. He meant buried. He meant I should swallow it like I'd swallowed everything else. I looked at him, and the pattern snapped into place like an EKG strip. Years of small corrections, the way he made my questions feel childish, the way he trained me to doubt my own instincts. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a slow campaign. And that's why you picked me, I said quietly. Because you thought I'd stay quiet, like a good nurse, like a good wife. His jaw worked. That's not fair. It's accurate, I replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, going for intimacy. Trish, I love you. Sierra was work stress, midlife stuff, you know? I thought of the storage unit, labeled boxes, a ring tucked under Christmas, a separation timeline with bullet points. Midlife stuff doesn't come with a lease. You don't love me, I said. You love what I make easy. His eyes went wet, not with remorse but panic. If you do this, he said, you'll ruin me. That sentence clarified everything. I nodded once. You ruined you, I said. I just found the receipts. Somewhere upstairs, the furnace kicked on, a low sigh through the vents. I remembered him at the retirement seminar, hand on my knee, whispering, "We're almost there." Now I heard it differently. Almost there meant almost gone. For you, not us. Silence dropped hard. Darnell stared at the dark screen like it might save him. You told her I wouldn't notice, I said. He tried. I didn't mean, yes, you did, I replied. His voice broke into anger. What do you want from me, Trish? You want me to beg? Fine, I'm sorry. I was suffocating. You don't understand what it's like to be stuck with the same wife, I finished. He flinched like I'd struck him. I stood and slid the folder into my bag. I'm staying with my daughter tonight. You're leaving? Panic rose. I'm exiting, I said. He followed me to the door. Counseling. Whatever you want. You don't get to offer me anything now, I said. You offered her our future. On the porch, the night air hit my face cold and honest. Inside the doorway, Darnell looked like a man realizing the house he'd been dismantling was finally collapsing. On him. I sat in my car for a moment with my hands on the wheel, breathing slow. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a witness holding its breath. At the first red light, my phone buzzed. Marlon. Did you confront? I typed. Yes, speakerphone. She confirmed transfers. I'm leaving now. He replied. Good, do not go back alone. We file Monday morning. The light turned green. I drove on, the road ahead dark and open. And if you're wondering what I felt, triumph, heartbreak, relief, here's the truth. I felt cold, not numb, clear. The kind of cold you feel in a hospital corridor at 3 a.m. when you realize some things can't be saved, only documented, declared, and left behind. Monday morning came with the kind of light that feels indifferent. Pale sun smeared across low winter clouds as if the sky didn't want to commit to anything. I slept on my daughter's couch with my folder under a throw blanket, like a weapon I refused to put down. Nia brewed out coffee before I woke, the smell curling through the apartment like a promise. You sure? She asked when I pulled on my coat. I looked at her, 27, steady, her father's height, but not his softness, my eyes in her face and my mother's stubbornness in her posture. I'm sure, I said. I've been sure for a long time. I just didn't have proof. Outside, the cold air bit my cheeks. The ride to Marlon's office was quiet, except for the wipers squeaking over the windshield. The folder sat in my lap. Every time I felt doubt try to rise, I pictured B417, the orange bin labeled Christmas, the ring tucked under tissue paper like a joke. I pictured Sierra's voice on speakerphone, the way she said she'd told her mom. Doubt dried up fast after that. Marlon filed that morning. He didn't dramatize it. He slid papers into a system that treats lives like case numbers, and he did it with the same calm he'd had when he first looked at my evidence. Dissipation of assets, he said, tapping a page. Adultery. Financial misconduct. Will request an emergency order to stop further transfers. Can he move money today? I asked. He can try, Marlon said, but now he'll have to explain it to a judge. The courthouse hearing was set for Thursday. 3 days. In those 3 days, Darnell didn't call to apologize. He called to negotiate. First text, let's talk like adults. Second, don't do this. You'll regret it. Third, you're really going to ruin everything? I forwarded each one to Marlon. I didn't answer. On Wednesday night, Darnell showed up at Nia's apartment. He stood outside the building like a man who'd lost his map. Coat collar turned up, eyes scanning the parking lot as if Sierra might be watching from a dark car. When I opened the door, he tried to smile. Trish, he said softly. Please. Nia stepped beside me, arms crossed. You don't get to say please now, she told him. His gaze flicked to her, then back to me. I just want to talk. We already did, I said. In the kitchen, remember? His jaw tightened. You're making me the villain. You made yourself the villain, I said. I just stopped playing the wife who pretends not to notice. For a moment, his eyes looked wet. Then the wetness hardened into anger. You think you're so righteous, he hissed. You think because you work in a hospital, you're some kind of saint. I held his gaze without flinching. I'm not a saint, I said. I'm a woman who found your burner phone evidence and your secret bank account and decided I wasn't going to die quietly. His face twitched at the phrase secret bank account, as if the words themselves could summon consequences. You don't understand, he tried again. I was under pressure. Sierra, she. I don't care about your reasons, I said. I care about your choices. He stared at me like he wanted to say something sharp, something that would slice and make me bleed the way I used to. But Nia's presence was a wall, and my calm was thicker than his cruelty. He swallowed and stepped back. This is divorce after 50, he said, voice bitter. This is going to be ugly. It's already ugly, I replied. I'm just turning on the lights. He left without another word. Thursday, the courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant, the way institutions try to mask decay. Marlon met me at the entrance, suit crisp, eyes calm. Yvette arrived a few minutes later with a tote bag and her most dangerous expression. Quiet. Nia came too, shoulder to shoulder with me like a brace. Darnell arrived with a lawyer who looked too young to have seen real consequences. Darnell wore a new suit, expensive, tailored, the costume he used when he wanted to look innocent. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, his expression was not remorse. It was calculation. In the hearing room, Marlon spoke in numbers. He laid out the transfers, the pattern, the dates. He introduced the storage lease. He introduced the Arlington apartment lease. He mentioned the call, the speakerphone, the voicemail about the retirement transfer. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Facts don't need volume. Darnell's lawyer tried to spin it. Marital planning, he said. Mr. Coleman was simply managing investments. Marlon's eyes didn't blink. Managing investments does not require a burner phone, he said, and a ripple moved through the room like a draft. The judge, a woman with sharp glasses and a tired mouth, looked over the paperwork and then looked at Darnell. Mr. Coleman, she said, do you have an explanation for why these transfers were routed without your spouse's knowledge? Darnell's face tightened. He glanced at his lawyer, then back at the judge. It was complicated, he began, the same line he'd fed me for months. The judge didn't flinch. Complicated is not a legal defense, she said. This looks like intentional concealment. She granted the order, freeze further transfers, preserve records, set expedited discovery. Darnell's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. Outside in the hallway, he reached for me. Trish. I stepped back. Talk to my lawyer, I said. His eyes flashed. You're really doing a silver divorce story, huh? Making me some cautionary tale. I smiled, small and cold. You made yourself one, I said. I'm just the narrator. The months that followed were not cinematic. They were procedural. Paperwork, disclosures, deposits. Marlon traced the money like a blood trail. Some transfers had gone to accounts Sierra controlled. Some had gone to an investment vehicle tied to her family. When faced with subpoenas, Sierra vanished from Darnell's life the way she'd appeared. Quietly, efficiently, without love. The fantasy collapsed as soon as it required accountability. Darnell tried to bargain. He offered counseling. He offered apologies. He offered to start fresh. But every offer sounded like a salesman pitching a product he didn't believe in. The divorce finalized in 9 months. Fast by court standards. Cold by human ones. Darnell was ordered to return a portion of the diverted funds and pay penalties for concealment. He kept his suits. He kept his pride. He lost the story he'd been writing where he walked away with everything. On the day the judge signed, I didn't cry. I felt the same empty calm I'd felt watching him leave the coffee shop years ago in another woman's story, only this time the calm belonged to me. I walked out of the courthouse with Yvette on one side and Nia on the other, and the winter air hit my lungs clean. 3 years later, I turned 55. Starting over at 55 wasn't a glowing montage. It was quiet. It was me learning to sleep without listening for keys in the lock. It was me buying my own couch and choosing the fabric because I liked it, not because it looked successful. It was me checking my accounts without dread, watching my retirement rebuild like a slow heartbeat. It was therapy sessions where I said out loud what I'd swallowed for decades. I made myself small so he could feel big. On some nights, when the apartment was silent and the city outside was a low, continuous hum, I'd think about Darnell's double life and feel that cold podcast shiver again, the knowledge that ordinary houses can hide extraordinary deceit. Then I'd stand on my balcony, hands wrapped around a mug, and remind myself of the only truth that matters. My life is mine now. Every sunrise felt like a receipt, proof that I survived, and he didn't own me. If this story hit you somewhere tender, do me a favor. Like the video so it reaches someone who needs a flashlight. Subscribe if you want more stories about survival, betrayal, and rebuilding. And in the comments, tell me, what would you do if you found a burner phone and a transfer deadline? Click the end screen to keep listening.